And this is the last in a short series of talks called Being Extravagantly Generous and Kind. And as part of this series, we've looked at Jesus' command for us to be extravagantly generous and kind. We've looked at giving financially to others and how to be extravagant in the way that we give whilst avoiding burnout. And today I want for us to look at the matter of being extravagantly generous and kind to the poor in particular. Before I carry on, let's just pray. Let's just focus our minds back on to God, onto this particular matter. Lord, I would just ask that you prepare our hearts to hear this. Bless me as I speak, and I pray that you would be glorified. You'd look good, and we would closely follow you. We just invite you into our hearts, God, and we ask that you're with us at this time. Thank you, Lord. We started this series by looking at something that Jesus once said, which was, I am giving you a new command. You must love each other just as I have loved you. If you love each other, everyone will know that you are my disciples. And this quote comes from John 13:34-35. And what makes it so amazing is its context. Jesus said this whilst eating with his disciples during a Jewish Passover festival meal, knowing that it would be the last meal he would have before his death. And during the meal, he explained to his disciples who he was and why he had come to earth. Jesus said that he was the Son of God and that he had come to save people, to reunite people with God, all because he loves people so much. And it was in this context, the context of life-giving death, that he said, love each other as I have loved you. In other words, be extravagant in how you love others, because I have been extravagant in the way that I have loved you, said Jesus. Show to others the love that costs and a love that produces life. And so as we look at what it means to be extravagantly generous and kind, we can't ignore the issue of poverty. Who are the poor? And what do we mean when we talk about poverty? Well, I think that we tend to see poverty in terms of economics and financial limitations. In the Bible, however, the poor are generally seen as those who are powerless in society and who therefore lack the basic necessities they need to sustain their lives. People who are poor are without resources, without a voice. They lack not only power, but also dignity and social respect. The realm of poverty reaches far wider than just money. It's social justice. And at the root of poverty is a breakdown of relationships. Poverty is not a financial issue, it's a social issue. The poor are the least in society, the lonely in society, and the lost in society. Financial need is just one symptom of social marginalisation. Poverty is mentioned either directly or indirectly over 2,000 times in the Bible, and time and again the matter of poverty is mentioned in the context of social marginalisation. I want to just read you a few examples, and as I read these out, just listen for the social perspective of poverty. Okay, this first one comes from Deuteronomy. He ensures that orphans and widows receive justice. He shows love to the foreigner living amongst you and gives them food and clothing. Isaiah says, "This is the kind of fasting I want. Free those who are wrongly imprisoned. Lighten the burden of those who work for you. Let the oppressed go free and remove the chains that bind people. Share your food with the hungry and give shelter to the homeless. Give clothes to those who need them and do not hide from relatives who need your help." In Luke, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me." This is what Jesus is saying. "For he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim that captives will be released and that the blind will see and the oppressed will be set free." Again in Luke it says, when you put on a luncheon or a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame and the blind. Then God will reward you for inviting those who could not repay you. In Romans, when God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager to practice hospitality. You see, in all these verses and many more besides, we see poverty expressed in terms of social justice. And I don't think that much has changed today. It remains the case that the poor are socially marginalised and powerless. The poor are the least in society. They are the lonely in society, and they are the lost in society. Poverty remains a social issue. The good news is that God has a particular love for the least, the lost and the lonely. Here's what it says in 1 Samuel. It says, "God raises up the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with princes and inherit a seat of honour." But most passages in the Bible that deal with poverty require the church, you and me, to respond to the issue of poverty. And so the hope of the poor is found in our practical response to the life and the teachings of Jesus. Jesus calls the whole church to lead society by example, by taking responsibility to tackle poverty, because the church is a family and a community. We are able to confront poverty not so much because of what we do, but because of who we are. Because the church is a community centered on Christ, and because the antidote to poverty is life in community, the church holds the key to unlock radical change for the poor. Individuals can alleviate the pain of poverty, and many do a fantastic job. But it's the role of the whole church to pioneer change and sustain the lives of the poor. During the very early days of the church, immediately after Jesus stepped onto the earth, the disciples, motivated by Jesus' teachings and model, began to look after the poor by taking orphans and widows back into their houses and treating them as though they're their own family. And this was all done at a time when the Roman Empire really struggled with how to deal with the homeless, with the poor. And many scholars believe that it was the disciples' extravagant generosity and kindness to the poor that caused the church to grow like wildfire. And you know what? My observations is that churches today that are healthy and growing are churches that have an emphasis on serving and welcoming the poor. Southend Vineyard, if you're looking, I don't suppose you are, you're probably doing your own thing right now, but you are a wonderful example. Southend Vineyard is led by a couple of really good friends of mine, Sam and Andy. They run a food bank 7 days a week. And during lockdown, they have helped to ensure that 105 homeless people are accommodated. And in the first 3 weeks of lockdown, they served 1,058 people at their food bank. Well done, you guys. That's just amazing. Now, they're about 20 years older than us, and they're much bigger, but we have some stories of our own, don't you know? We also have a food bank. And now, because we don't own our own property, we operate our food bank out of Matt's car, and we deliver food to people's houses. We put it on their doorstep. And that's really great for people who are in isolation or for those who don't have any form of transport and who can't get to us. And here's just a few things that people have said as we've been doing these food banks. One lady who recently received a food bank from us said, "I'm really over the moon with your service, and when things get back to normal, I'm going to visit your church and say thank you to you." One guy said with the money that he saved through receiving a food bag, he was able to make a special rainbow cake with his kids. They were so delighted that they could make the cake that they actually sent a picture of the cake to us. When we give out food bags, we enclose an invitation for people to listen to these live streams. One lady lost the invitation, but she wanted to listen to these so much that the next time when we came to visit her, she asked us to give us another one of the invitations so that she could listen to us. And look, if you're listening to us right now, a big hello from all of us here. Another guy has an eating disorder, and so he didn't want any food, but he also has a dog, and he called us up and he asked if we could provide him with some dog food. We said, look, that's absolutely fine, and if he were to change his mind about having food for himself, just give us a call at any time before we leave the house. Well, about an hour later, he called again and he asked for some food for himself. That guy hadn't eaten for 4 days. Subsequently, we've been back to see him again with even more food. And then there's another guy who simply advertises us to all of his mates and all of their mates. He is our #1 referrer of people. Thank you very much. Another guy has a very specific dietary requirement. And so Matt, as he was doing some shopping, he did a particular shop just for this guy. And when Matt came to deliver, he saw Matt picking the stuff out of the back of his car from the window of his house. And he just started shouting expletives from his window with joy, because that was his way of showing delight. Here's something. During the COVID lockdown, we in Sheffield Vineyard have delivered to people's houses over 500 meals. And with every drop-off, we offer to pray with all of those people. For us as a church, extravagant generosity and kindness is more than something we just value, it's a virtue. It's something we are currently doing, but it's also something we are always wanting to get better at doing. If you were to ask me, Alex, what reputation would you like for the Vineyard in Sheffield to have? You know, what would we want to be known to be really good at? I would say being extravagantly generous and kind to the poor. One of our highest acts of obedience is to love people into life, especially the poor. And I want to show you another clip now from our BBC series, not our BBC, the BBC series, Amazing Humans, which we can show you with permission. It's a clip of Maria, who helps men from all walks of life by providing suits from them for them as they go to a job interview. So the next two.
Wear a suit?
Feels amazing, man. I look amazing too, right?
Every single person who comes here wants to go on and to make a difference to their lives. So when they come here, our stylists see them and they style them from top to toe. So they get the most fantastic suit, shirt, tie and shoes, and we dress them to impress for their job interview.
Look at me.
Put your head up. It
Yeah.
looks really nice.
Goes nice for your eyes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
That's very nice. The kind of chaps that we see and help might be long-term unemployed, looked after children, ex-offenders, and generally people who need a helping hand.
I'll be honest with you, I was just out on the streets doing what every other boy was doing if they were growing up around council flats and stuff, you know. It's that I was out selling drugs, I was robbing, all that stuff there. That's why I was at risk of going to jail. I came here, I had my hoodie up. I weren't really paying attention, I weren't confident or nothing. And then when I put on my suit, it was just like, I just felt good. It's like a big change. And it gives so much people opportunities to finally have a suit and be able to go to a job interview and stuff like that.
It's the confidence and the self-esteem that comes from not just looking the part, but feeling the part. And that's really important.
I think this one. And do you feel good in it?
Yeah, I feel good. Like I always feel good when I'm dressed up. Like I don't
Yeah.
dress up very often.
The majority of clients that come in, they're very shy, and it's a really big thing for them to come here. And then obviously once we start trying clothes on, the difference between when they've come in and when they've got their suit on is just so overwhelming. Their confidence literally just raises.
I think the work she's doing is unheard of. I never thought that this would be the case. I thought that when I was referred through the organisation that they were paying for the suit, then to find that it was a charity, I was just thinking there needs to be more things like this. I always get emails from Maria every now and then asking me how am I doing, and it's nice to have that relationship with her because it goes beyond just fitting a client, it's actually connecting with them on a personal level as well.
So when you can make that emotional connection with someone and you can help them get on to the next stage of their life, it's a feeling of great joy and happiness. I love what I do. It's absolutely amazing. It's just incredible. It's so stimulating and wonderful. It's running a charity, you have to find the resources. It's a battle every single day, but it's a battle that I wouldn't change for the world.
The pressure's
What kind
on.
of knot is this?
The pressure's on. Windsor knot.
Who taught you how to do this knot?
YouTube. There. Then it goes. Wow, I only did this morning.
You
There we
didn't
go.
Do that tie this morning.
I promise I did. And then it goes. There we go.
I think we're on. I wouldn't want for me to be cut off again. That's just great, and we were inspired by these clips from Amazing Humans. But I want to tell you something about, I think, something God's calling us as a church to prepare for. I hope you're listening to this bit because this is important. Sit down and listen to this. It involves investing your time, your energy, and your money. It involves investing these things into areas of Sheffield that feel the effects of social poverty. If you've been a part of this church over the last couple of years, then you will have heard us talk about our vision for Sheffield to be a city full of people who are full of life. And we believe that God is calling us as a church to extend our vineyard community further across the city, reaching a number of areas, especially those that feel the effects of poverty, such that our single church community will be located in more than one place. Our sense is that God is calling us to buy or to rent somewhere amongst the marginalised that we can use to bless people and invite the community into our church family. And the key to its growth will be the way that we love the least, the lonely, and the lost into life. And we're actively looking to buy or rent a shop or something similar in a more socially challenging area which we can use as a venue to bless the community. It would be a place in addition to where we normally meet, which is Birkdale School. And by having a place of our own, which we can use throughout the week, we hope that we will be able to have more groups for parents with babies and young children, a youth venue for much bigger kids, a place where we can have loads of alpha courses. We could significantly expand our food bank project. It would be a community cafe or shop, a safe place for people to sit down and drink decent coffee and talk about life. Maybe we can have a wardrobe of suits and a rack of coats outside. And maybe it can be used as a place for other things of your invention and your instigation. We sense that God is calling us to look for a property with a living space as part of it, because we want for some of our radical people to take root in that place and be part of that community. And additionally, we would love for people, maybe graduates or young professionals, risk takers and all-out kingdom carriers, to move into these areas and play a key role in bringing about a new church site, which would be part of Sheffield Vineyard. And we think this is a vision that is challenging yet attainable. And we are excited that it will enable us to positively affect poverty as we bring people who are marginalised back into community and back into a life that Jesus always has wanted them to have. Now, be under no illusion, this vision will take time and perseverance. It will need money, your money, money that you have earmarked for maybe a new guitar or a new kitchen or a new car. It will consume energy. Extravagance costs. But think of the rewards, the eternal rewards. Imagine when you're in heaven and you meet someone who got there because you stumped up some cash to help pay for a shop, or because you spent a day a week collecting food, counting tins and packaging them up so that they could be given to somebody else. Or maybe when someone bobbed in to get a suit, you served them a coffee and you had a chat with them, and during that conversation you invited them to an alpha course, and they decided during one of those sessions to give their yes to Jesus. You know, when you ask someone if they want to say yes to Jesus and they say yes, it is the best feeling in the world, because you've just escorted someone through the gates of heaven. I don't think any of this is implausible. I think it's very much achievable and necessary, and I think it's exciting. And if you're excited about this, then write some stuff in the Facebook comment thing. You know what you do. But maybe as I'm talking, already you're starting to think to yourself, well, all this is great. I love the ideas, but I don't think that I can significantly contribute because I don't have a lot to give. Well, if that's the way you feel, if you feel that you're not in a position to significantly help, then here are 4 practical things that you can do now that will directly help you to be extravagantly generous and kind to the poor. Okay, so 4 things. Firstly, 1, consider God's grace and mercy. Consider God's grace and mercy. See, when we lean towards the least, the lonely and the lost, we do so with an attitude of knowing that we too are utterly dependent upon God's mercy. The truth is, we don't help and serve people because we think we're better than them or we can fix them. We do it because we know that we've experienced generosity and kindness in the grace and mercy of God ourselves. Grateful people are people less likely to judge others and more likely to care for others. Jesus himself said, people who know that they have been forgiven show much more love to others. Secondly, commit to praying for God to do amazing things through you. See, buying a building that will be big enough for us to do all the things that we want to do will cost so much money that we simply won't get it unless God does one of his amazing miracles, unless he divinely intervenes. So let's start praying for God to do amazing things and offer yourself up as a conduit through which he moves. You see, you can get involved in this next big step by praying with faith for God to do something extravagant with you. Your prayer will make all the difference. And as you pray, remember this. To date, we as a church have never spent more than £60 a week on a church building. And just in case you don't know, we have sometimes over 100 people in our church. As part of our building, we have a huge hall, we have a gym, we have storage. We have so much. We have never spent more than £60 a week on that. The church family has experienced a weekly miracle for the last 7 years. Birkdale School, which is a fantastic Christian school in Sheffield, are a wonderful conduit of God for us. We thank you again so very much. So remember what God has done and is doing as you ask him to do even more. We've found that every time we ask God to do even more, he just does it. Thirdly, just get on and do it. I mean, practice extravagant generosity and kindness. Just do it. One way we can show extravagant generosity and kindness at this time of lockdown is to contact people we feel may be struggling. Maybe they're really finding it difficult being confined in their own house, being on their own. Why don't you write them a letter, send them a text or an email, call them up for a chat? Now, I know as much as you do that it can be really awkward calling someone who you might not speak with regularly, but that's where extravagance enters. Extravagance draws us to be bold, to do things we wouldn't normally do, to take risks, to go over and above our our level of comfort. Maybe you could invite them to have a look at next week's Sunday service on Facebook. From what I'm hearing, huge numbers are accessing churches for the first time, and hundreds are saying yes to Jesus. Now is a great time to invite and welcome people to our church. In this time, God is doing amazing things in the lives of people who don't yet know him. Let me just tell you something. An older couple in our church sent me this letter just yesterday. Let me read this out to you. It says this. Throughout our lives, we have spoken with and prayed for our families to know Jesus. They have met Christians and they have Christian friends, but still do not understand how much God loves them. And throughout this COVID season, I've been praying big prayers, she says. My brother-in-law, a really healthy 71-year-old, was diagnosed with cancer following a biopsy in March this year and needed major surgery. Not many operations were being done as hospitals were largely full of patients ill or dying from the virus. However, he went into hospital and had an operation lasting 4 hours. And during this time, my sister, who's not yet a believer, said that she started praying. She said that she had started praying when this is the person writing this letter, when I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and was expected to die within weeks of diagnosis. That was some 2 years ago. And I know that this person is fighting fit. I mean, she's just doing so well. Her husband's condition got her praying again. 5 days after the operation, on the 20th of April, that's just 19 days ago, my brother-in-law was discharged. He's now taking his daily walks, observing social distancing. At the same time as all of this, my husband's brother was also taken into hospital. He was already on a waiting list for a kidney transplant, but his condition worsened. And he was also taken into hospital and was diagnosed with the coronavirus, and the doctors prepared him for the worst. They did not think that he would survive the night. However, he did survive, even though by that point it was realised that the virus had affected his heart and he had an infection in one of the outer coverings of his heart. My husband's sister, who's also not yet a believer, called last Thursday to say 2 things. Firstly, she said, I've been recently praying, and she doesn't normally do that. And secondly, their brother is recovering against all the odds. Later that same day, he collapsed and had a cardiac arrest and was resuscitated on the ward. But again, he came round and continued to recover. The following Monday, he was so well that he was discharged home. We praise God. We're so thankful for the unbelievably quick healing of our family and the prayer life that they started in people who don't yet believe in God. Now, if you're medical, you'll be able to read between some of those lines because there are some amazing things. Those people, quite frankly, really should be dead if it weren't for the amazing miracles that Jesus is doing in their lives. And it's just provoking their family to question the love of God. And I don't think that story is quite finished yet. And many of us are going to continue to pray for that family. I'm going to get on to the 4th thing now, the last thing. We're coming into land. The final practical thing that you can do now that will directly help you to be extravagantly generous and kind to the poor is to believe that God will give you as you give to others, so that you will never be left empty. In the Gospel by Luke, Jesus says, "Give and you will receive. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured into your lap." The amount you give will determine the amount you get back. Now, what we shouldn't read into this is give so that you will receive. That's not what Jesus is saying. This is saying, as we align our plans with God's plans and share his heart for the poor, so we can be assured that he will guide us and give us all that we need to do his will. Don't worry about being too generous. I just don't think God will ever turn around and say to us, hold on, you're just being too generous to the poor. I can't keep up with you. Just slow down and stop giving everything away. I just don't think God is going to be doing that. He will always keep up with us and he will always go further than us. So, to summarise, okay, we are coming to land, I promise. To summarise how we can directly help each other now, especially the poor, by being extravagantly generous and kind. Here are 4 things. Consider God's grace and mercy. Think of poverty less in terms of giving money and more in terms of forming relationships with people who you know don't have a lot of friends. Think in terms of helping people to feel valued and worthy in society, because that's what God thinks about you. Secondly, commit to praying for God to do amazing things. Start to talk to God about our church plans to spread further afield in Sheffield. There are details to be resolved. If you hear God saying something to you, please let me know. Send me an email and ask how God might get you involved. Thirdly, just do it. Don't be put off by the magnitude of poverty. You know, a wall is built up one brick at a time. God is already on the move, and just join him as he does his bricklaying, as it were. And then fourthly, believe that God is with you and he will bless you. And as you seek and serve the poor, be extravagantly generous and kind. And now